I never thought checking my mail on a Tuesday afternoon would lead to me dismantling an entire HOA board. But the letter demanding I remove my basketball hoop within 48 hours or face a $500 fine turned out to be the first domino in a chain reaction that would expose years of fraud. My name is Benjamin Vance, and I had lived in the Riverside Meadows subdivision in Charleston, South Carolina, for about 3 years. The neighborhood was nice enough with neat lawns and families who waved when you drove past. The problem was the HOA, or more specifically, the HOA president, a woman named Patricia Montgomery who seemed to believe her entire purpose in life was to make everyone else miserable. Patricia was in her mid-50s, always wore her blonde hair in a severe bob, and had the kind of tight smile that made you want to check your wallet was still in your pocket. The basketball hoop incident was just the latest in a long series of complaints. 6 months earlier, she had cited me for having my trash cans visible from the street on a non-collection day, even though I had literally just gotten home from work and was about to wheel them back. Before that, it was my mailbox being the wrong shade of black. Before that, my lawn being a quarter-inch too long. I had paid every fine, attended every hearing, and followed every ridiculous rule because I thought I had to. But this basketball hoop fine felt different. My nephew Tyler had just moved in with me after my sister went through a messy divorce, and the kid was having a rough time. He was 12 years old, and basketball was the one thing that seemed to bring him out of his shell. The hoop was mounted above my garage, not even visible from most angles in the neighborhood, and I had checked the HOA rules before installing it. There was nothing in the covenants about basketball hoops. I called Patricia that same Tuesday evening. She answered on the third ring with a clipped, Patricia Montgomery speaking. "Hi Patricia, this is Benjamin Vance from 847 Willowbrook Lane. I just got your letter about the basketball hoop and I wanted to discuss it." "There's nothing to discuss, Mr. Vance. The hoop is a violation of our community standards. It must be removed. I read through the entire HOA covenant before I installed it. There's no mention of basketball hoops anywhere. The board has determined that such recreational equipment constitutes an eyesore and diminishes property values. You have 48 hours. Can I at least see the specific rule I'm violating? The board's authority is clearly established in our charter. If you refuse to comply, the fine will increase to $1,000 and will pursue Mr. Vance." She hung up before I could respond. I stood there in my kitchen, holding the phone and feeling my blood pressure rising. Tyler walked in, bouncing his basketball, his face hopeful. "Can we shoot some hoops after dinner, Uncle Ben?" I looked at him and made a decision. "Yeah, buddy, we definitely can." That night after Tyler went to bed, I did something I should have done years ago. I went into my home office and pulled out every piece of HOA documentation I had received since moving in. The original covenant from when I bought the house, every amendment notice, every meeting minute, every fine letter. I spread them all across my desk and started reading. Most of it was exactly what you would expect, boring legal language about lawn maintenance and architectural guidelines. But then I found something odd in the original covenant package. There was a page titled Charter Establishment and Duration that I had never really paid attention to before. It stated that the HOA charter was established on March 15, 2006 and was valid for a period of 10 years, at which point it would need to be renewed through a vote of the homeowners. I read that paragraph 3 times. 10 years from 2006 would be 2016. I grabbed my laptop and started searching through every email and letter from the HOA. There was no mention of any charter renewal vote, no notice about renewing the charter, nothing. It was past midnight when I finally leaned back in my chair and let the realization sink in. If the charter had expired in 2016 and it had never been renewed, then technically the HOA had no legal authority. Every fine they had issued in the past 8 years, every rule they had enforced, every meeting they had held, it was all potentially invalid. I needed to be sure. The next morning, I called in sick to work at the construction company where I worked as a project manager and drove to the Charleston County Public Records Office. The clerk, a friendly woman in her 30s named Maria, helped me pull the HOA registration documents. "Here's what we have on file for Riverside Meadows," she said, handing me a folder. "The original charter from 2006, and then, that looks like it. Nothing else. No renewal in 2016? Let me check the database." She typed for a moment, then shook her head. "No, nothing. If they renewed, they never filed it with the county. What happens if an HOA operates without a valid charter? I'm not a lawyer. But generally speaking, they would have no legal standing. They couldn't enforce rules or collect fees. You might want to consult with an attorney, though. I thanked her and sat in my car in the parking lot, my mind racing. I needed a lawyer, but lawyers were expensive, and I had already spent thousands over the years on HOA fines. Then I remembered my college roommate, David Chen, who had become a real estate attorney. We had lost touch over the years, but I still had his number saved in my phone. He answered on the second ring. "Ben Vance, is that really you? Hey David, long time. Listen, I know this is out of the blue, but I need some legal advice." "Sure, what's going on?" I explained the situation, the expired charter, the years of fines, everything. There was a long pause when I finished. "Ben, if what you're saying is accurate, this is huge. Do you have copies of all the documents?" "I can get them. The county has the original charter on file." "Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to look into South Carolina HOA law, and you're going to gather every single piece of documentation you have. Every fine, every letter, every payment." "Can you do that?" "Absolutely. And Ben, don't say anything to the HOA yet. If this is real, we need to be strategic about how we handle it." I spent the rest of that day and the next organizing documents. I created a spreadsheet with every fine I had paid since 2016, which totaled over $8,000. I reached out to my neighbors carefully, asking if they had copies of fines or letters from the HOA. Most people were hesitant, scared of retaliation from Patricia, but a few came through. My next-door neighbor, Harold Mitchell, an elderly veteran in his 70s, came over with a box full of documents. "I have been dealing with that woman's nonsense for years," he said, setting the box on my kitchen table. "If you found a way to stop her, I want in." Inside Harold's box were violations going back to 2017, everything from Christmas decorations being up too long to his grass being the wrong shade of green. He had paid over $12,000 in fines. "Harold, did you ever receive any notice about voting to renew the HOA charter in 2016? He frowned, thinking, "No, I don't recall anything like that." "Why?" "Because I don't think they renewed it. I think the charter expired, and Patricia has been operating an illegal HOA for 8 years. Harold's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "I'm meeting with a lawyer to confirm, but it looks that way. Son, whatever you need from me, you've got it." David called me back 2 days later. "Ben, I've gone through South Carolina HOA law and consulted with a colleague who specializes in this area. If the charter expired and wasn't renewed, the HOA has no legal authority. Any actions they've taken since the expiration would be void. So all the fines would be illegally collected money, and any homeowner who paid could potentially sue for reimbursement, plus damages. What do I do now?" "First, we need to verify with absolute certainty that no renewal vote took place. That means checking with every homeowner in the subdivision to see if anyone received notice or voted. Second, we need to document everything the HOA has done since 2016. Third, we need to send a formal letter to the HOA board informing them of the expired charter and demanding they cease all operation. And if they don't stop, then we go to court. But Ben, this is going to get messy. These people have been collecting money and wielding power for years. They're not going to give it up easily." "I don't care. They tried to take away the one thing that makes my nephew happy. I'm done backing down." Over the next week, I became a man on a mission. I created a simple survey and went door to door in the neighborhood, asking every homeowner if they remembered receiving any notice about a charter renewal vote in 2016. Out of the 87 homes in Riverside Meadows, I managed to speak with residents from 73 of them. Not a single person remembered any such notice. What I did find was a community full of people who were angry and frustrated with the HOA. A young couple, Steve and Diana Walsh, had been fined $2,000 for painting their front door navy blue instead of the approved black. An elderly widow, Mrs. Patricia Brennan, let me correct that. An elderly widow named Dorothy Brennan had been threatened with legal action over her rose garden being visible from the street. A family with 3 kids had been cited repeatedly for having toys in their yard. The more people I talked to, the angrier I became. Patricia Montgomery and her board had been terrorizing this neighborhood for years, collecting tens of thousands of dollars in bogus fines, all while operating without any legal authority. I organized a meeting at my house on a Saturday afternoon. 23 homeowners showed up, filling my living room and spilling into the kitchen. I stood in front of them and explained what I had found. The HOA charter expired in March 2016. There was no renewal vote. For the past 8 years, Patricia Montgomery and the board have been operating illegally. Every fine they've issued, every rule they've enforced, none of it is valid." The room erupted in questions and exclamations. Harold stood up and called for quiet. "Let the man finish." "Thank you, Harold. I've consulted with a real estate attorney who specializes in HOA law. He's willing to take on the case. But I need to know if you're all with me on this. If we're going to challenge the HOA, we need to be united." Steve Walsh raised his hand. "What's this going to cost us?" "My attorney is willing to work on contingency for any lawsuit against the HOA for damages. But initially, we need to send a formal cease and desist letter. He's agreed to do that for a minimal fee that I'm happy to cover myself." Diana Walsh spoke up. "What happens if they don't stop?" "Then we file an injunction to prevent them from taking any further action, and we pursue legal action to recover all the money they've illegally collected." A younger guy named Marcus Thompson, who lived 3 streets over, stood up. "I'm in. They fined me $1,500 last year because my car was parked in my driveway overnight instead of my garage. Said it was an eyesore. It's a 2-year-old Honda, not a junk heap." One by one, people voiced their support. By the end of the meeting, everyone in the room had agreed to be part of the challenge against the HOA. We exchanged contact information, and I promised to keep everyone updated. David drafted the cease and desist letter on Monday. It was 3 pages of legal language that essentially said the HOA's charter had expired. They had no legal authority, and they needed to immediately stop all enforcement actions and return all illegally collected funds. We sent it via certified mail to Patricia Montgomery, as well as to the other 3 board members: Vice President Sharon Hendricks, Treasurer Robert Carlson, and Secretary Linda Murphy. The letter was delivered on a Wednesday. Patricia called me that evening, and she was furious. "How dare you spread lies about this HOA? You are in violation of multiple covenants, and now you're trying to undermine the legitimate authority of this board." "Patricia, the charter expired in 2016. You never renewed it. I have the documentation from the county." "That's absurd. We have operated continuously since 2006. "Yes, you have. But without a valid charter since 2016, you've had no legal authority to do so. The letter explains everything clearly. I suggest you consult with your own attorney. You're going to regret this, Mr. Vance. I promise you that." "Is that a threat, Patricia?" She hung up on me again. I immediately called David and told him about the conversation. "Document everything," he said. "Every interaction, every call, every letter. If she tries to retaliate, that's just more ammunition for us." The next day, I received a letter from the HOA, delivered by hand to my mailbox. It stated that my basketball hoop fine had been increased to $2,000, and that I was being fined an additional $5,000 for spreading false information that damages the reputation of the HOA. The letter gave me 72 hours to pay or face immediate legal action. I scanned the letter and emailed it to David. He called me within an hour. "Ben, this is perfect. They just proved they're continuing to operate despite being informed the charter is expired. We're filing for an emergency injunction tomorrow morning." True to his word, David filed the injunction on Friday morning in Charleston County Court. The filing included all the documentation: the expired charter, the county records showing no renewal, affidavits from multiple homeowners stating they never received notice of a renewal vote, and copies of all the fines and enforcement actions taken since 2016. We got a hearing date for the following Wednesday. David was confident. "The evidence is overwhelming, Ben. Unless they can produce proof of a valid charter renewal, which we both know they can't, the judge is going to grant the injunction." The weekend passed slowly. I tried to keep things normal for Tyler, shooting hoops with him and taking him to a low-country boil restaurant on Saturday night. But my mind was constantly on the upcoming hearing. On Monday morning, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line was "Be careful." The email was short. "You're making powerful enemies. Drop this before someone gets hurt." I forwarded it to David immediately. "This is witness intimidation," he said. "Print it out and bring it to the hearing. Keep documenting everything." Tuesday evening, Harold called me. "Ben, you need to see this." I walked over to his house and found him standing in his driveway, staring at his car. Someone had keyed both sides, deep scratches that went down to the metal. On his windshield was a note: "Mind your own business. When did this happen?" "Sometime today while I was at the VA hospital. I was gone from 9 this morning until about an hour ago. Did you call the police?" "I'm about to, but I wanted you to know. This is related to the HOA thing, I'm sure of it." A police officer arrived within 20 minutes. Harold gave a statement, and the officer took photos of the damage and the note. I explained about the HOA situation and the upcoming court hearing. The officer, a young guy named Officer Davis, took notes. "We'll file a report for vandalism and intimidation," he said. "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" "I have suspicions, but no proof," Harold said. "There's a woman named Patricia Montgomery who runs the HOA. She's been getting a lot of pushback from the neighborhood lately. We'll look into it. In the meantime, if anything else happens, call us immediately." After Officer Davis left, I helped Harold cover his car windows with plastic, and we talked about whether he wanted to back out of the court case. Harold was adamant. "Hell no, I'm not backing out. Whoever did this just made me more determined. I didn't serve 2 tours in Vietnam to come home and be intimidated by some HOA tyrant." Wednesday morning arrived and I put on my best suit. David met me at the Charleston County Courthouse at 8:30. We went through security and found the courtroom where our hearing was scheduled for 9 o'clock. At 8:55, Patricia arrived with the other 3 board members and a lawyer I didn't recognize. She saw me, and her face went red, but she said nothing. Her attorney, a polished man in his 50s with silver hair, introduced himself as Gregory Walsh. No relation to Steve and Diana Walsh from the neighborhood, thankfully. The judge, Honorable Margaret Foster, took the bench at exactly 9. She was in her early 60s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Good morning. I've reviewed the filings in this matter, Mr. Chen. This is your motion. Please proceed." David stood and presented our case clearly and methodically. He showed the original charter with its 10-year term, the county records showing no renewal, the affidavits from homeowners, and the continued enforcement actions by the HOA despite being informed of the expired charter. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear and undisputed. The HOA's charter expired in March 2016 and was never renewed. Since that time, the HOA has continued to operate, collect fees, issue fines, and enforce rules without any legal authority to do so. We're asking for an immediate injunction preventing them from taking any further enforcement actions, and we're prepared to file a class action lawsuit for the return of all illegally collected funds." Judge Foster turned to Gregory Walsh. "Counselor, does your client dispute that the charter expired in 2016? Walsh stood, and I could tell from his body language he was uncomfortable. "Your Honor, the board was not aware that the charter had expired. They have operated in good faith, believing their authority was continuous. That wasn't my question. Do you dispute that the charter expired?" We have been unable to locate documentation of a renewal vote." "So the charter did expire and was not renewed?" "It appears that way, Your Honor. And your client has continued to operate and collect fees despite having no legal authority. As I said, they were unaware. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse, Counselor, especially for an organization that claims legal authority over dozens of families." Judge Foster looked down at the papers in front of her. "I'm granting the injunction. The Riverside Meadows HOA is hereby ordered to immediately cease all enforcement actions, collection activities, and operations until such time as a valid charter is established through proper legal channels. Furthermore, given the evidence of continued operation after being informed of the expired charter, I'm ordering the HOA to preserve all financial records for the past 8 years pending further legal proceedings." Patricia stood up abruptly. "Your Honor, you can't do this. We have a responsibility to maintain community standards." Judge Foster's expression hardened. "Madam, you will sit down and remain silent or I will hold you in contempt. You have been operating an illegal organization for 8 years. You're fortunate I'm not referring this matter to the district attorney's office immediately." She turned to David. "Mr. Chen, if you wish to pursue a class action for recovery of funds, you have my encouragement to do so." "Thank you, Your Honor. This hearing is adjourned. The court's order will be filed within the hour." As soon as we were outside the courtroom, David shook my hand. That went better than I could have hoped. Judge Foster clearly didn't appreciate their continued operation after being notified. What happens now? Now we organize the class action lawsuit. We're going to get everyone's money back, Ben. Every penny they illegally collected. Patricia and her board members came out of the courtroom, and Patricia made a beeline straight for me. Gregory Walsh tried to stop her, but she shook him off. "You have destroyed this community," she hissed, getting in my face. "Property values are going to plummet. The neighborhood is going to fall into chaos. I hope you're happy." "Patricia, all I did was point out that you've been operating illegally for 8 years. If anyone destroyed anything, it was you. I have dedicated countless hours to this HOA. I have sacrificed my time, my energy. Everything to keep this neighborhood beautiful and orderly. And in the process, you've collected tens of thousands of dollars in illegal fines and made everyone's lives miserable. The judge made the right call. Gregory Walsh finally pulled her away. Mrs. Montgomery, please. You need to stop talking. As they walked away, David turned to me. That was satisfying. Now let's go tell your neighbors the good news. I sent out a group text to everyone who had come to the meeting at my house. Within an hour, my living room was packed again, this time with champagne and celebration. Harold brought a bottle of bourbon and we toasted to victory. So what happens with all the money we paid? Marcus asked. David is going to file a class action lawsuit to get it back, plus damages for the illegal operation. How long will that take? David fielded this question. Class actions can take time, but given how clear-cut this case is, I'm optimistic we can reach a settlement within 6 months to a year. The HOA had insurance for exactly this kind of thing, so there should be funds available. Over the next few weeks, things moved quickly. David filed the class action lawsuit on behalf of all Riverside Meadows homeowners who had paid fines or fees since March 2016. The lawsuit named Patricia Montgomery, Sharon Hendricks, Robert Carlson, and Linda Murphy individually, as well as the HOA as an organization. The discovery process revealed some shocking information. Patricia had been paying herself a management fee of $30,000 per year from HOA funds, something that was never disclosed to the homeowners. She had also used HOA money to pay for personal expenses, including a family vacation that she had classified as research for neighborhood improvements. When these details came out, several homeowners, including Harold and Marcus, filed a police report for embezzlement. The Charleston Police Department opened an investigation. Detective Sarah Morrison was assigned to the case. She was thorough and professional, interviewing multiple homeowners and requesting all financial records from the HOA. The records, which the HOA was required to preserve under Judge Foster's order, showed years of questionable expenses. I met with Detective Morrison twice to give statements. The second time, she told me, Mr. Vance, what we're finding here goes beyond just an expired charter. There's evidence of significant financial fraud. Mrs. Montgomery has been treating the HOA like her personal bank account. Can you prove it? We're building the case. These things take time, but I'm confident we'll have enough for charges. 3 months after the initial court hearing, David called with news. The HOA's insurance company wants to settle. They're offering full reimbursement of all fees and fines paid since March 2016, plus 15% for damages and inconvenience. What does that mean in real numbers? For you personally, about $9,000. For the neighborhood as a whole, we're looking at approximately $340,000. And what do you think? Should we take it? I think it's a fair offer. We could go to trial and potentially get more, but it would take another year or two, and there's always risk. My recommendation is to accept. I called an emergency meeting of the plaintiff homeowners. Out of the 87 homes in Riverside Meadows, 79 had joined the class action. We met at the neighborhood park on a Sunday afternoon, and David presented the settlement offer. There were questions and debate, but ultimately, the vote was nearly unanimous to accept. Only 2 homeowners voted to reject and continue to trial, but they were outvoted. The settlement was finalized in October, 6 months after I first discovered the expired charter. Checks were mailed to all the homeowners who had participated in the lawsuit. I received mine on a Tuesday morning, $9,215. I deposited it immediately and then took Tyler out to celebrate at his favorite pizza place. So we get to keep the basketball hoop, he asked, grinning. We definitely get to keep the basketball hoop. Does this mean the HOA is gone forever? It means Patricia can't boss people around anymore. The HOA can be restarted if the homeowners vote to create a new one, but it would have to be done properly this time with everyone's input. The criminal case against Patricia took longer to resolve. Detective Morrison and the district attorney's office built a case for embezzlement, fraud, and theft by deception. In February of the following year, Patricia was arrested at her home. The local news covered it, showing footage of her being walked to a police car in handcuffs, her face a mask of fury and humiliation. I didn't take any joy in seeing her arrested, but I felt a sense of justice. She had abused her power for years, made people's lives harder, and stolen money that didn't belong to her. There were consequences for those actions. Patricia's trial took place in May, over a year after I had first discovered the expired charter. I attended every day of the trial along with Harold, Marcus, and several other neighbors. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of her misuse of HOA funds. Her defense attorney tried to argue that she had been entitled to compensation for her work managing the HOA, but the prosecution showed that she had never disclosed these payments to the homeowners and had falsified records to hide them. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. They found Patricia guilty on all counts: embezzlement, fraud, and theft. The judge sentenced her to 3 years in prison and ordered her to pay full restitution of the money she had taken, approximately $240,000 over the 8 years she had operated the illegal HOA. Sharon Hendricks, Robert Carlson, and Linda Murphy were not charged criminally, as the investigation showed they had largely been unaware of Patricia's financial manipulation. However, they were named in the civil lawsuit and had to pay damages from their personal funds. In the aftermath of everything, the Riverside Meadows community had to decide what to do about governance going forward. A series of meetings were held, this time open to all homeowners and not controlled by any board. There was vigorous debate about whether to reform an HOA at all. Some people, burned by the experience with Patricia, wanted nothing to do with any kind of homeowners association. Others felt that some basic standards were necessary to maintain property values and neighborhood appearance. After 3 months of discussion and negotiation, a compromise was reached. A new charter was drafted, but it was radically different from the old one. The new HOA would have strictly limited powers, focused only on maintaining common areas like the neighborhood park and entrance. There would be no architectural control, no fines for lawn height or basketball hoops or Christmas decorations. Dues would be minimal, just enough to cover landscaping of common areas and liability insurance. The charter would be for 5 years, not 10, and would require a renewal vote. All financial records would be published quarterly and available to any homeowner who requested them. Board members would serve 2-year terms with strict term limits, and they would not be compensated in any way. The vote to adopt this new charter passed with 73% approval. Elections were held for the new board, and Harold Mitchell was elected president. He tried to decline, saying he was too old, but the community insisted. Marcus Thompson was elected treasurer, and Diana Walsh became secretary. They took their positions seriously, but with a light touch, exactly as the community wanted. Life in Riverside Meadows gradually returned to normal, but it was a better normal. People painted their front doors different colors. Basketball hoops appeared on several driveways. Christmas decorations stayed up a little longer. The neighborhood felt more relaxed, more friendly, more like an actual community instead of a subdivision under surveillance. Tyler thrived in this environment. He made friends with other kids in the neighborhood, and they would play basketball in our driveway until dark. He started doing it in school, and the sadness that had clouded him after his parents' divorce began to lift. My sister eventually got back on her feet and moved to Charleston to be closer to us, getting an apartment about 15 minutes away. Tyler started spending half his time with her and half with me, but he still came over to shoot hoops at least 3 times a week. One evening, about 18 months after the whole thing started, Harold came over while Tyler and I were playing basketball. He had a beer in his hand and a big smile on his face. "You know, Ben, I've been thinking about everything that happened. About how one person noticing one detail brought down an entire corrupt system. It wasn't just me, Harold. Everyone helped. Sure, but you were the one who looked at that charter. You were the one who wouldn't back down when Patricia tried to intimidate you. A lot of people would have just paid the fine and moved on. I caught the basketball Tyler had just shot and held it. I couldn't let her take away something that made my nephew happy. And the more I dug into it, the angrier I got about all the people she had been hurting for years. Well, I'm glad you did. This neighborhood is better because of what you did. Hell, my life is better. I'm not walking on eggshells worried about getting another violation notice. I can actually enjoy my home. That's all I wanted. For everyone to be able to enjoy their homes without someone constantly watching and judging." Harold raised his beer bottle in a toast. To noticing the details. I touched my water bottle to his beer. To noticing the details. Tyler grabbed the ball from me. "Are you guys done being sappy? Because I'm about to school both of you in a game of horse." Harold laughed. "Kid, I may be 74, but I played college basketball. Bring it on." We played until it got dark, the 3 of us, laughing and talking trash and just enjoying the simple pleasure of a basketball game in a driveway. No one came to cite us for noise. No one measured the height of the hoop to make sure it met some arbitrary standard. No one threatened us with fines. It was exactly how life in a neighborhood should be. The experience changed me in ways I didn't fully recognize at first. I became more engaged in local politics, attending city council meetings, and staying informed about issues affecting Charleston. I joined the board of a tenants' rights organization, helping people who were dealing with corrupt landlords or management companies. I learned that standing up to unjust authority wasn't just possible, it was necessary. David and I became close friends again, reconnecting over the case and staying in touch afterward. He told me that the Riverside Meadows case had become something of a legend in real estate law circles, a cautionary tale about HOA oversight and the importance of proper governance. I've been contacted by 3 other neighborhoods with similar issues, he told me over lunch one day. None of them had expired charters, but they all had boards that were overstepping their authority and misusing funds. Your case gave people courage to fight back. That's good. No one should have to live in fear of their HOA. You know, you could make a business out of this. Consulting with homeowners who are dealing with HOA problems. You've got the knowledge now, and you've been through it. I thought about it, but ultimately decided against it. I liked my job in construction management, and I didn't want to spend all my time fighting HOAs. What I had done in Riverside Meadows, driven by a specific injustice against my nephew and my neighbors. Turning it into a business felt like it would diminish that somehow, but I did start a blog, documenting what had happened and providing resources for other homeowners dealing with HOA issues. I explained how to research your HOA's charter, what your rights were, how to organize your neighbors, and when to get legal help. The blog got a surprising amount of traffic, and I received emails from people all over the country thanking me for the information. One email particularly stuck with me. It was from a woman in Arizona named Jennifer who had discovered that her HOA's charter had also expired. She used the information from my blog to challenge her HOA board, and after a legal battle similar to mine, she won. She got back $7,000 in illegal fines, and the HOA was forced to reform with proper oversight. You gave me hope that I could fight back, she wrote. Thank you for sharing your story. That email made everything worthwhile. The stress, the confrontations, the months of uncertainty, it had all led to positive change not just in my neighborhood, but potentially in others across the country. Patricia was released from prison after serving 20 months of her 3-year sentence, getting out early for good behavior. She and her husband sold their house in Riverside Meadows and moved to Georgia. I saw the moving truck when I was driving Tyler to school one morning. I felt a complicated mix of emotions, mostly relief that she was gone, but also a strange kind of pity. She had destroyed her own life through greed and a need for control, and now she had to start over somewhere else with a criminal record and a ruined reputation. I never spoke to her again, and as far as I know, no one else in the neighborhood did either. She had become a cautionary tale, the HOA president who went too far and paid the price. The neighborhood park, which the new HOA maintained, became a gathering place for the community in a way it never had been before. People felt ownership of it now, felt like it was truly theirs rather than something controlled by an overbearing board. Kids played there after school. Families had picnics on weekends. We started having an annual 4th of July cookout there, with everyone bringing food and drinks and staying late into the evening to watch fireworks. At the 3rd annual cookout, Harold stood up and made a speech. He was 81 by then, a bit slower but still sharp as ever. I want to say something to all of you, he began, his voice carrying across the park. 5 years ago, this neighborhood was not a happy place. We were all scared of doing something wrong, of getting a violation notice, of being fined for living our lives. But one man had the courage to stand up and say enough is enough. Ben Vance, can you come up here? I felt my face get hot as everyone turned to look at me. Tyler pushed me forward and I reluctantly walked up to where Harold was standing. Ben, because of you, we took back our neighborhood. We learned that we have power when we stand together. We learned that authority without legitimacy is just bullying. And we learned that one person who refuses to back down can change everything. On behalf of everyone here, thank you. The park erupted in applause. People were standing, clapping, some wiping their eyes. I saw Diana Walsh, who had become a good friend over the years, beaming at me. Marcus Thompson gave me a thumbs up. My sister was there with Tyler, both of them clapping and cheering. I didn't have a speech prepared. I just spoke from the heart. I appreciate this. I really do, but I didn't do anything special. I just read the documents and asked questions. What we accomplished together. Harold, you stood with me when Patricia tried to intimidate us. Marcus, Diana, everyone who came to those meetings and signed on to the lawsuit, you're the reason we won. And the real victory isn't getting the money back or seeing Patricia punished. The real victory is this, right here. A community that actually feels like a community. That's what matters. More applause, and then someone started grilling hot dogs, and the party continued. Tyler came up to me later, now 15 years old and shooting up in height, already taller than me. That was pretty cool, Uncle Ben. You're like a neighborhood hero. I'm not a hero, Tyler. I just didn't want them to take down your basketball hoop. Well, thanks for that and for letting me stay with you when everything was bad with Mom and Dad. You didn't have to do that. Of course I did. Your family. Family shows up for each other. He gave me a quick hug, still at that age where showing affection was a little embarrassing, then ran off to join his friends. I watched him go, this kid who had been so sad and lost 3 years ago, now confident and happy and thriving. Maybe Harold was right. Maybe standing up to the HOA had mattered for more reasons than I had realized. The statute of limitations on any remaining HOA violations ran out, meaning no one could ever be held accountable for old violations from the Patricia era, even if they wanted to try. The financial settlement had been fully distributed. The criminal case was closed. The new HOA was running smoothly with minimal drama. Everything that had started with that violation notice about a basketball hoop had been resolved. But the lessons stayed with me. I learned that authority figures aren't always right. I learned that legal-sounding threats often have no legal basis. I learned that communities are stronger than individuals, and that people will stand together if someone is willing to take the first step. I learned that reading the fine print matters, that details matter, that asking questions matters. Most importantly, I learned that you don't have to accept injustice just because it comes from an official-looking letterhead. You can fight back. You can win. And even if you don't win, the act of fighting back has value in itself because it says you refuse to be pushed around. I still live in Riverside Meadows. I have no plans to move. This is my home, my community, the place where I stood up for what was right, and found out I was stronger than I thought. Tyler is in college now, playing basketball for a Division III school in North Carolina. He comes home during breaks and we still shoot hoops in the driveway, though he's gotten good enough that he beats me most of the time now. Harold passed away last year at 85. His funeral was held in the neighborhood park, and it seemed like the entire community showed up. He had lived a good life, served his country, raised a family, and in his final years helped lead a neighborhood to freedom from oppression. His son told me that Harold had talked about the HOA fight constantly, that it had given him a renewed sense of purpose in his retirement. Dad said you reminded him why he served in the military, his son told me at the funeral. To protect people's freedom and rights. He was proud to stand with you. I was proud to have known him. The basketball hoop is still mounted above my garage. It's a little rusty now, the net is frayed, but I'm not replacing it. It's a monument to a fight we won, a reminder that sometimes the smallest things, a kid's basketball hoop, can become symbols of resistance against tyranny. Every time I look at it, I remember that Tuesday afternoon when I opened my mail and found a violation notice. I remember the anger, the frustration, the determination not to back down. I remember the late nights reading legal documents, the nervous anticipation before the court hearing, the satisfaction of watching Judge Foster grant the injunction, but mostly I remember the community that came together, the neighbors who became friends, the collective power we discovered when we decided enough was enough. That's the real legacy of discovering the HOA operated on an expired charter. Not the money we got back, not the justice we achieved, but the bonds we formed and the community we built. And it all started because I actually read the documents instead of just assuming the HOA had the authority they claimed. Sometimes the revolution begins with homework. Sometimes changing the world is as simple as noticing that a charter expired in 2016 and nothing they have done since counts. The new HOA still exists, but it's a shadow of what Patricia built. It has a budget of about $5,000 a year, used entirely for maintaining the park and the entrance landscaping. There are no fines, no violations, no enforcement actions. The annual meeting is attended by maybe a third of homeowners and usually lasts less than an hour. It's exactly what an HOA should be, a minimal administrative structure to handle shared resources and nothing more. I serve on the board now, having been elected 2 years ago. It's not a power position, not a way to control the neighborhood. It's a service position, a way to give back to the community that stood with me when it mattered. We meet once a quarter, review the finances, discuss any issues with the common areas, and that's it. No drama, no power trips, no violation notices. Sometimes new residents ask me about the neighborhood's history, having heard rumors about the HOA scandal. I tell them the whole story, not leaving anything out. I want them to know what we went through, what we overcame, and why the HOA operates the way it does now. I want them to understand that the freedom they enjoy, to paint their house whatever color they want, to leave their trash cans out an extra day, to put up as many Christmas lights as they desire, that freedom was fought for and won, and I always end by telling them the same thing. Read your HOA documents. Understand what authority they actually have. Don't assume that because something comes on official letterhead it's legitimate. Ask questions. Demand transparency. Stand up when something isn't right, because that's how you keep freedom once you've won it. You stay vigilant, you stay engaged. You refuse to let authority creep back in when you're not looking. The basketball hoop above my garage isn't coming down. Not now, not ever. It's a symbol, a reminder, a statement. It says that this is my home, I live here, and no one gets to tell me I can't have a basketball hoop for my nephew. And if they try, well, I'll just check their charter and make sure it's actually valid this time.